What up, nerds? So, the other day I took the wagon on a road trip. Cricky's wagon, not my wagon. And it was pretty terrible. Well, it was fine going there. On the way back, it was pretty bad. Well, for one, the windows still don't go up because I haven't fixed them yet. The low beams suck because water got into them and the reflectors have separated from the housing. And then the wipers don't work. So basically, I drove home in the rain with no wipers, terrible low beams, and then the high beams pointed all the way up in the sky because the nose sits way up high because I lowered the back with the Daytona springs. So to remedy all of that, I'm going to put neon struts on the front to lower it. Now there is a lot of parts interchangeability between 80s Chryslers, 90s neons, 2000s neons, you know, certain other like Chrysler models. I'm not sure it was intentional or if it just happened to, like, you know, they just use standardized measurements across you know, production vehicles. I have no clue, but a lot of heavy lifting throughout for research has been done throughout the years so that we can just, you know, look through the message boards. You know, it's like digging through crypts at this point, you know, because sometimes they're dead posts. But, you know, we can do a lot of research and find out what parts from certain vehicles still fit. I forgot to mention this, but you don't have to do this. You can still get stock suspension pieces from rockauto.com. You can go to a parts store and find them. You can cut your springs if you want to lower it that way. You can buy lowering springs from Eibach or used from some of the message boards. Or you can go to Richard Bryan's website and order a BC Racing coilover kit for $1,700. I did this because it was cheap and it was an effective way to lower the car, still have full travel of the strut, you know, and still have a decent ride quality. You know, like the car rides like a stock car still. So, but you don't have to do this. You know, it is somewhat, you know, labor intensive, but, you know, the reward is better off. But these are literally parts I just had laying around. It's the only reason why I did this. So I just wanted to put this out there for you. So anyway, I parted out a car a while back and I kept the front struts off of it. It's the complete strut. And these are just gonna drop into the car. Hey! What?
You know you can't just do that, right? They don't just bolt on.
No, you have to modify the car a little bit for the struts to fit.
You know that the spring rate's not gonna be right. The dampening's gonna be all wrong.
The car's way close enough. The spring rates and the dampening's gonna be fine. Why don't you lock it up before I come over there and cut your springs?
Well, all right. Take it easy, buddy. I hear you.
It's 2022. Pretty much anything you want to get done to a K car has already been done. Somebody's already done it. It's been accomplished. There's people you can talk to get answers and advice from. The SDAC group on Facebook is really knowledgeable. That's where most of the Turbo Dodge and TurboMopar.com guys are. The Turbo Mopar forum is still pretty active. I'm not sure about Turbo Dodge because I'm locked out of my account. I can't log back in, so I can't check on there. So there's, you know, just like decades worth of information that's still easily available. There's nothing hard to do on one of these. But like seriously, if you can think of it, it's probably already been done, other than like a motor swap out of a different manufacturer, except that somebody's already done a J-Series swap into a Daytona. So that's been done. I don't remember his name, but I know he lives in Ukraine, so keep him in your prayers if you do that. So basically what I'm saying is, at this point, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're able to you know, use the information that was garnered before us to accomplish things that we didn't want to get done now. And it's just makes our lives easier. But still, the process is going to be the same. First thing you need to do any suspension work on your car is to jack it up and support it properly. So that's what we're going to start with. So if you're on a loose surface like me, I'm on gravel, I'm going to keep the jack up. No real weight on it, but there. Ooh, I might need to do the oil pan soon. Okay, next step, remove the wheels. From here is when things start to get a little spicy. You gotta remove the struts. So this is the strut clevis, and then there's the brake hose that's attached to the strut with a 10mm bolt. Hopefully these just bust right off. That one popped right off. Yep, that came off. Cool. Now I need the mallet. Vincent. Oh yeah, this is definitely going to need axles. By the way, there's that little spacer. We'll have to remember this when I tell you about the measurements. So the next thing you want to do is try and get your brake hose clamp bolt out. But from the looks of it, oh, it went. Ooh. I'll be honest, this is not the first take. I've already hit it with a hammer. Try 3. Last step to removing the strut, at least, is to getting these 13mm bolts out. Now, I am cheating. I'm using my impact gun. You can do this with a hand wrench, but I don't want to. It is late March. It's above freezing outside, and it's been snowing off and on for hours. I'm just sick of it. Of course, I turned the camera off to figure it out, but basically took my pry bar, stuck it under the strut, and kind of picked up on it, and just eased it up over the tie rod, and there it is. So it's gonna need tie rods, as it needs axles, because the boot's torn, slinging grease everywhere. It's gonna need brakes. The pads look okay, but the rotors are shot, so I might as well do both. Let's move on to, let's show the comparisons of these two. All right, so on the right is the K-car strut. On the left is the 2nd gen Neon strut. It has a higher spring rate. These come with 150-pound springs, where I think these come with 120 in the front. They're real soft. They're so soft you can actually compress these by hand, where these are a little bit stronger. Also, the spring mount is a lot lower on the 2nd gen. I know on a K car you can fit a pretty tall tire. You can fit up to I think like a 26-inch tall tire on a stock strut. So we're just, spitballing some numbers out here. Looking at 7 5/8 to the from the center up to the spring mount. For here, you're looking at like 6 1/2 up to the spring seat. So I almost fell over. I don't even drink anymore. Whew. So on a 2nd gen Neon, you can only fit about a 24-inch tall tire before you run into some issues. Stock tire size on a K car is 185/70/14, which is like right at 24.2 inches. Should be fine. I'm gonna have myself a seltzer water. So it should be okay. You might have to hammer. I might have to hammer the spring perch a little bit to make it fit. But also the strut as a whole is shorter, and then the top mount is a little bit different. So you can see the top mount on a K car is actually recessed. It's recessed in there a good bit, where on a Neon, they actually protrude out a good bit. So this comes into play some of the modifications that you have to do to make these struts fit. So another thing about the struts, the K cars are just under an inch. I believe it's 0.97 inches, where the 2nd gen Neon is 1.27 inches. So it's 30 thou bigger. That's where this little spacer comes into play. I believe it's just under a 1/4 inch or just around a 1/4 inch. It makes up almost enough space, and if you just hammer it with your impact gun, it'll fit. This isn't a race car. It's not going to be an autocross car. It's just going to be driving down the road. So this is going to work just fine. I'll take that back. This is actually right around 5:30 seconds, just over 1/8 of an inch. But it'll still get us pretty close, and the clevis mount will bend to fit. So this has been parked under a tree for about 6 months, but it's my SRT 4-swapped LeBaron that I got a few years ago. It's already been converted to use PT Cruiser SRT4 style struts. So first off, they cut this with what looks like a die grinder or something. It's not a very clean hole. Second off, you actually have to re-drill your strut mounts. It's not very difficult. You just have to make a template to do it. But once that's done, you know, you can use SRT4 struts, coilovers. This actually has PT Cruiser struts and springs on it, which gave it a little raise in the front, but I'm going to put coilovers on the front to bring it back down. So what you need to do is you need to enlarge this hole. You can do it with a plasma cutter, you can do it with a die grinder. Some people have done it with an angle grinder if you're really good, but some people do it with a hole saw. So that's what I'm going to do. I got a 3.5 inch hole saw. That's almost the exact size you need. It'll pretty much center itself once you get it going real good, and it'll just, you know, cut exactly what you need out, and you can just bolt your strut up. Well, also you need to re-drill the hole. So I'm going to make myself a template using the strut I have, and I'll show you how I'm doing that. So to start with the template, just take your piece of cardboard, take your hole saw, you got your circle to start with. All right, take your strut, center it up in the hole that you made. Give it a good eyeball. You can give it a little whack with a hammer. There's your template. So I noticed after I got done filming a bunch of this that I'd put the third hole not in the wrong spot, because it doesn't matter which way the strut top hat is oriented on these because it's flat, but I didn't put it where I wanted it to be. So the hole that I'm about to punch out right here is not exactly where I wanted it to be. So I'm going to go back and re-drill it how it is on a Neon, where it's facing the opposite side, closer to the engine, because it gives a little bit more hood clearance versus it being really close to the fender, which puts it really close to the hood. I did it on the correct way on the driver's side. I just did it the wrong way here. All right, let's hole doze, I guess. Let's see if this can do it. So this actually took me a while to get right, and I kept blocking the camera with my arm. But I had to switch drills because I actually set my first drill on fire, which was not so fun. But I had to start off with a more powerful drill and basically take it a lot slower. I actually had the drill on the #1 setting, and I just had to take it pretty slow until it started cutting really well. And then once it got going really well, I was able to crank it up to the #2 gear and really got it going. I'm going to lube that up a little bit, but we're getting there. All right. A little bit of Super Tech lubricant. And that's done. Whew, man, that was not as easy as I thought it was going to be. Well, anyway, now I made a huge mess out of things. Let's get this done. It's too loud. I'm starting off with a smaller bit in the back. Honestly, that bit will probably do it, so I'm gonna just leave it there for now. Let's see if that strut fits in there, or if I gotta go at it a little bit more. And then tomorrow I gotta clean this hole up because it looks terrible. All right. All right, Poopy heads home. She didn't get to see the carnage. All right, so the hole is not perfect. It's a little small. I should have angled it this way. I got this bolt started, so I'm gonna try and draw it up. Yep, that'll do it. This one, draw it up. Draw it up. I need to get this one down a little. Maybe I can just... One more. Nope. I'm gonna have to trim it just a hair in here. Or something, but oh, there's two. That third one just came up. I got it started. There it is. There's all three. So on this side, it was pretty cold, and it actually started snowing while I was working on the car, so I didn't really feel like talking. And I also wanted to see how quickly I could get one side done. And from start to when I ended up having my little mishap and I ended up stopping, it only took me 50 minutes. Alright, so I screwed up a little bit. I drilled the holes. I didn't drill this one exactly where it should have been. So these two line up. I did have to wallow this one out. I'm going to wallow this one out a little bit this way. So I'm going to get my drill out, kind of take out this corner a little bit, put them all back in. because the holes that I drilled are not the same size as the stock holes, which give you a little bit of slop to move the strut around in. So I'm just gonna give this one a little love here, pop that strut back in. Right here, prime example of doing things wrong. Snap the studs off, pulling the strut up through. So I gotta pull the strut back out, pound the studs out, replace them, put it back up, hope that this one holds while I pull it up into place, and then replace these studs. And I don't know if I'm gonna find knurled ones today, so they just, you know, I mean, these God knows how old these things are. These nuts are probably 20 years old, and I'm hitting them with an impact gun like they owe me money, so I'll be right back. So it's several days later. You know, I couldn't get back to the car in the time I wanted to. And so I busted 2 of the studs off, so I was like, well, screw it, I'll just replace them with bolts. And then I realized I can't really feed it up and get it bolted on at the same time. So I welded the studs in. Only problem is I welded them on backwards. And I was let me tell you, I was very, very pleased about this. So I went digging through my garage and I found another top hat that was good that I kept. So I'm going to pair it up with the strut that I just took apart and reassemble. All right, nerds. It's the following Saturday. I finally flipped this one around, got that one mounted. I decided to replace the hardware with new bolts and fender washers. I used 5/8 fender washers because they were easier to find than the M8 ones at the store. I got all that finished up, so now I'm going to move on to actually bolting in the struts on the bottom on the clevis. I might actually have to put the jack under this to lift it up. So move that over. Alrighty, this bolt started there. Slide it through here. Ah, yes. Take the one that has the eccentric, slide it through the bottom. Eventually, it'll go where it needs to go. I have to move that little bracket piece in there some. Oh, there it goes. That's through there. I'm just using the jack to pull a little pressure up on the bottom because I'm kind of weak this week. I worked a lot of overtime, so I'm tired, but this should be just fine. Now this eccentric bolt, what it does is as you twist it, it'll actually adjust the camber based on how close this egged out portion gets out to the edge. You see it kind of brings the top of the bolt out, or the top of the spindle. There's the motion right there. We're just going to kind of leave it in for now. My other wagon doesn't have an eccentric bolt, so straight up and down seems to be okay for it. It really needs a good alignment. I'm going to take it to a shop, a performance shop here this summer. This one, I'm just going to eyeball it for now because we're not going to drive it that far for now. We'll just send it home. Same thing on the bottom. So you can see right in here, this was kind of far apart, and as I drove it home with the impact, it pulled the whole clevis together. I should have filmed it in high speed, but I didn't think about it on this side. I'll do it on the other side though. So I'd mentioned earlier that there is a 30 thousandths difference between this clevis mount and the 2nd generation Neon clevis mount. If you use 1st generation Neon struts to lower your K-car, you won't need to do this, and you can put this little bracket piece on the outside where it's originally supposed to go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this strut fit this clevis mount using my impact gun. Now I've done this with a wrench before, with just a standard, you know, 1/2 inch ratcheting wrench, but it's much easier to do it this way. Here's something else kind of neat. The factory line will bolt up to these little factory holes on the Neon strut to keep your line up out of the way of the wheel. So we just need to do the same thing on the other side. Bolt the wheel back on, be able to set it down. Another thing you need to watch out for when you're lowering these K-cars, when you unbolt the struts, they will leak transmission fluid usually. This one has a jack shaft on the passenger side, so it won't leak fluid on the passenger side, but on the driver's side, these actually don't have C-clips on the transmission, so it makes the axles really easy to get out. But unfortunately, there's springs inside of the CV on this side, and when you let the spindle hang free, the axle will kind of shift out of the transmission and allow it to leak fluid. I'm not sure how much it leaked, so I got to go buy some and then start it, let it warm up, and measure the fluid and find out how much I lost. All right, great news everyone. There is a lot of room between the strut and the wheel with these 185/70 14s on. So we're good there. I'm gonna bolt these on, lower it down, see what it looks like. Oh man! Oh man! That's perfect! Holy diver! Oh, buddy! This. My boy told me this might only lower it like 1.5 inches, and man, this that's a lot lower. Oh, I took measurements. Let me be right back. All right, so I went right across the center of the tire to the lip of the wheel well. It's at just a hair under 23 to the lip, so let's call that 22 7/8. What was it before? Before it was 24 3/8. So that's 1.5 inches, but this is the biggest 1.5 inches I've ever seen. That is a dramatic difference. I got to get this thing out on the road so I can take a picture of it. But first I got to measure the transmission fluid level because I leaked some, add some fluid to it, and then get it on the road. But this looks amazing. This looks really, really good. I'm so happy I did this. All right, so first impression, it rides just a little bit firmer than stock up front. Of course, the rear's not any different than after I did the work to it. What do you think, Nugs?
It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
The rear's really bouncy though.
What'd you say?
The rear's really bouncy.
Well, yeah, it's soft.
Yeah.
It could use a stiffer spring out back.
Yeah.
But this is pretty nice.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as the SRT wagon.
No, it's not.
So the SRT4 wagon has a really stiff front sway bar. It's got like a 1 1/8 inch front sway bar, which is massive. And then it's got PT Cruiser struts and springs, which are really tall.
No wonder that thing's so tall.
Yeah. So this is what we ended up with. Daytona springs on the rear, 2nd gen Neon struts on the front, about 1.5 inch drop on the front, and you know, kind of leveling it in the rear. Decent ride, decent handling, and just, you know, it's not sporty, but it's just pleasant. It's pleasant to be in. I'm very happy with how this turned out. So there you have it. A little bit of effort, a little bit of time, and you can lower your beater pretty easily. Now I say an hour a day will keep the jack stands away. I did not do that this week, and I wasn't able to touch this thing at all. So I worked on it last weekend, and then I got stuck working a bunch of overtime and doing other stuff all this week. So I didn't get to touch it for 6 more days. So I would have been done this way earlier and on to something else, but it just held me back. I held myself back. So anyway, don't forget that an hour a day will keep the jack stands away.